Welcome back to F1 Unstoppable. Formula One Melbourne update, F1 2026 rule changes.
11 days, one desert, and a sport on the edge of its own destruction. The sand of Sakir has settled. The cars have gone quiet. But what happened in those 11 days of testing will echo all the way to Melbourne and beyond. Because this isn't just a preseason story. This is a reckoning, a rebellion led by the sport's greatest names. A secret advantage worth hundreds of millions. An emergency rule change sitting in a drawer in Paris, ready to be pulled the moment everything falls apart. So ask yourself two questions before we go any further. What if the 2026 regulations, years in the making, were already broken before a single race began? And what if one team already knew? Let's go back to day one. Sakir, first proper run under 2026 regulations. Max Verstappen hits 344 kilometers per hour down the straight. The paddock goes silent, not because of the number, but because of what happened next. For the remaining 10 days, Red Bull never came close to that speed again. No explanation, no statement, just silence. That was the first sign that something in these new regulations was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Because on paper, the 2026 rules were supposed to be Formula One's great reset. More electrical power, smarter energy deployment, a level playing field for a new era. But that's not what teams found when they pushed these cars to the limit. What they found was chaos. Drivers, not junior drivers, not pay drivers, but Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Fernando Alonso formed something almost unthinkable in modern Formula One. A rebellion. They warned the FIA directly. On high-speed, battery-sensitive circuits like Monza, Spa, and Silverstone, these cars would become not just slow, but dangerous. The word used in the paddock wasn't difficult. The word was undrivable. But that was just the start. Because while the drivers were raising the alarm publicly, something far more political was happening behind closed doors. The FIA began drawing up a plan B. An emergency electrical power reduction, slashing output from 350 kilowatts down to 250. 100 kilowatts. Gone. Before the season even started. And the moment that proposal leaked into the paddock, one team declared war. Mercedes-AMG Petronas built a political fortress almost overnight. Their argument? Technological excellence should not be penalized. The regulations were agreed. The sport must honor them. Let the engineering speak. Noble words. Admirable, even. But here's what makes this twist so compelling. Mercedes' resistance wasn't just principle. It was survival strategy. Whispers in the paddock, and they were loud whispers, suggested that Mercedes possessed an internal combustion engine running approximately 15 to 20 horsepower stronger than every rival on the grid. Under the current regulations, that advantage is meaningful, powerful, but containable. But reduce the electrical power allocation, and that same IC advantage becomes proportionally dominant. Slash 150 horsepower from the total output, and Mercedes doesn't just win races. Mercedes steamrolls the competition. So when they say don't change the rules, understand what they're really protecting. Now let's talk about the number that is haunting Aston Martin's engineers every single night. 50 horsepower. That is the reported deficit of Honda's power unit compared to its own performance targets. 5% below where it needed to be, and that 5% translates to a gap so large it threatens the 107% rule in Melbourne. For context, the 107% rule eliminates you from the race before it even starts. Fernando Alonso came to Aston Martin for one reason: podiums in 2026. He said it publicly. He believed it completely. And 3 to 4 months ago, when it became clear Honda could not reach its targets, even senior figures within the team struggled to contain the damage. The massive new factory in Silverstone, built for a championship campaign, went quiet. Sources suggest Honda may not be able to stabilize the unit until the Japanese Grand Prix, round 6, or later. That means Aston Martin is not managing a difficult start to the season. They are writing off the first half entirely. For a driver at Alonso's stage of career, that silence in Silverstone is deafening. And then there's Audi. On the final day of testing, they did something extraordinary. They scrapped their rear wing completely and copied Alpine's dropping flap solution, a system where airflow aligns into a single clean element under DRS, and downforce returns in a smooth, incremental fashion when the wing snaps shut. No wasted energy. No sudden instability. Cleaner, faster, smarter. In one day, Audi demonstrated what the fastest learners in this paddock can do. And in Melbourne, a street circuit where overtaking is a nightmare and downforce reattachment is everything, that wing could be decisive. So where does all of this leave us? 3 layers, 3 consequences, each one bigger than the last. First, the drivers. Hamilton, Verstappen, Alonso, these are not men who panic. When they collectively raise a safety flag about a set of regulations, the FIA listens. The rebellion has already forced the sport into emergency protocol mode. Plan B is not hypothetical. It is written, it is ready, and it is waiting for Melbourne to pull the trigger. Second, the championship. If the power reduction goes through, Mercedes' ICE advantage becomes a weapon no aerodynamic innovation can match. Ferrari, clinical and terrifyingly prepared, is the only team positioned to challenge them directly. Red Bull, still hiding behind the mystery of day one, will face their ultimate test in qualifying at Albert Park. And third, the future of the sport itself. If these cars clip on the straights of Melbourne, if drivers lift off the throttle halfway down the pit straight because they've run out of electrical energy, we may witness the most embarrassing mid-season rule revision in Formula One history. 100 years of engineering, and the world's fastest sport reduced to an energy conservation exercise. That is the paddock's biggest fear. And right now, it is becoming reality. So how does this end? Scenario 1. The FIA holds its nerve. No power cut. The 2026 regulations survive Melbourne intact. Red Bull's energy management genius unlocks. Verstappen wins. And the sport breathes again, but only just. Scenario 2. A car clips on the straight in front of 200,000 fans at Albert Park. The FIA pulls the emergency trigger. 150 horsepower disappears from the total output overnight. And Mercedes, with their internal combustion engine advantage suddenly amplified, begins building a dynasty that the rest of the grid cannot legally stop. Scenario 3. Alonso, running 50 horsepower short, doesn't make 107%. Tsunoda, quietly, brilliantly, outperforms Lawson in Red Bull's practice allocation. And somewhere in a hotel room in Melbourne, a mid-season seat change is quietly being planned. Because in Formula One, the politics never stop, not even during the race weekend. Will Melbourne become a battery-saving parade, or the greatest technical showdown in a generation? Did Red Bull truly crack the code of these regulations on day one and spend the next 10 days hiding it? And the question that keeps every team principal awake at 3 in the morning, is the 2026 era already over before it even begins? One thing is certain, the flight to Melbourne is not just carrying engineers, spare parts, and technical dossiers. It is carrying the future of Formula One. And in a sport where everything can change before the first corner, nobody is safe. If you made it this far, you already know, this season's not about who's fastest. It's about who survives the politics. So tell me, who's really pulling the strings behind Formula One's biggest drama? Drop your prediction below and hit subscribe, because the next technical earthquake is coming sooner than you think.